Hello and welcome to the 160th Second Photography Podcast. This is episode 194. We're getting close to that milestone of 200, and I don't know what I'm going to call this episode. I think I might just call it Updates and Stuff, because I haven't done anything, and normally I talk about me not doing anything photography-wise because I don't want to go out because of COVID and things. However, it's the opposite this time because I've actually caught COVID, so in the UK, it's, well, at the time of recording, it's Jubilee week, maybe. I don't know if we call it Jubilee week, but I'm in the Jubilee celebrations. So I've had time off and work for the Jubilee celebrations, but unfortunately, I caught COVID just before that. So all through the Jubilee celebration, I've just been in bed, really, or sort of staying away from people in my own house so as not to give them COVID. And it's been a mild case of COVID compared to what other people have reported. I'm fine. I've not given it to anyone in my family. I've just locked myself away in my office. I've slept there and, I've just been a little bit bored, really. And I've been using the time to update the YouTube episodes for this podcast. So it's a funny thing, YouTube. I am a YouTuber as well, and I have what I think is a successful YouTube channel. Others may disagree, but I think I'm doing very well on YouTube. I'm happy with how well I'm doing, and I know how to do well on YouTube. It's a hard slog, like everything. It is difficult. You've got to be consistent. You've got to put the time in, but I know what works and what doesn't work through a long trial and error process. So I've done things that don't work. I've done things that have worked. I've sort of tweaked things, and I know how to put videos out, etc. Now I know, and I knew before I started putting the podcast on YouTube, that YouTube doesn't work well for a podcast. It just doesn't. Podcasts are generally long. YouTube, I think generally my feeling is the shorter the better. Cut out unnecessary stuff. And you might feel I do that in the podcast anyway. I don't have flashy intros. I don't have sound beds. I just get into it and I just talk, and that's what I do. So I'm quite different from other podcasts in that respect. I don't have ums and ahs. I try to minimize them. Obviously, you get some of them that you can't minimize. And, that's it really. They just don't work together. Even if you go to a very successful YouTube channel and they've got a podcast in their area, the views are massively lower for their podcast episodes than their standard episodes. So I guess what I'm saying is I've always put the podcast on YouTube to gain a wider audience and to have it on another platform, and it only cost me time to do that. And over the years, I've experimented with different ways of how to put it on there. Some automated, some semi-automated, some manual. And sometimes I go on and I look at the stats and I'm surprised by them. So, but if you look at views alone, they can be misleading. I have a terrible audience retention. So because my audience retention is low, the YouTube podcast is never going to be particularly well publicised on YouTube, because YouTube will only publicise and promote things that have a high audience retention, and mine has a terrible audience retention. And that's not because what I say isn't interesting, because I'm sure someone finds it interesting. It's really because it's spoken word, and you can't jazz that up, really. It would actually take me longer to jazz up my podcast for YouTube than it would to make a YouTube video. So my podcasts are typically between 5 and 10 minutes per episode. Some, but they could go on for a lot longer. They could be 20 minutes, 40 minutes, and some have been, and some have stuck to sort of that average. But to make it visually stimulating is very, very difficult. So I've worked on something that makes it slightly more visually stimulating, which is using some sort of audio waveforms, and you might see some of that in my episodes if you go to YouTube, or if you're watching on YouTube. It's a strange one, that, isn't it? So I've attempted to make it slightly more interesting from an audio point of view, but at the end of the day, it's a podcast, and there isn't really much more you can do without investing a significant amount of time. I mean, I guess I could animate what I'm saying, but that would just take forever. I could have little characters acting out what I'm doing, but yeah, that would just take forever. And when the episode might be 17 minutes long, that's really going to take forever. So a short, sort of concise summary of that is, I have, because I've had not much to do, gone through and updated all the YouTube videos. I've put them out there. I mean, I was sort of automating their production onto YouTube, but I wasn't necessarily going in, filling out all the details and making them public and so on and so forth. But I've gone back and I've done that, and going forward, I'm going to try and keep up with the YouTube videos. The problem is, as I've said, I don't get a particularly big return on investment in terms of my time, and my time is precious. I've got lots of other things going on, so it just hasn't happened, but I'm going to try and do it. Thankfully, I've not had too many silly comments on YouTube. Maybe that's because no one's watching the episodes, but on my other podcast, on my other channel, I'm forever replying to comments. I don't mind replying to comments. Generally, they're people saying, "Oh, thanks for that," or asking for specific help, or saying this doesn't work. It's incredibly difficult to diagnose something not working via comments, but I try and help people, and I think that's appreciated. So that is the YouTube channel. And another thing I came across, which I'm interested in exploring, is going to be light painting. I've always enjoyed light painting. It's challenging, it's difficult, particularly when it's just me. But I came across someone who is using light painting and stenciling and photography to make images, and I think that's amazing. So I've seen what this person's done, and I'm just going to have a go at copying it. So I haven't done it yet because obviously I can't go out, I can't get access to things, and I'm a bit cramped where I am at the moment. But once I'm better and free of COVID, I'll be going out and having a go at that. I'm not going to make out I'm doing anything original. I'm blatantly copying someone and what they're doing. But isn't copying the best form of flattery? Well, anyway, I'm going to see how it goes because I'm quite interested. And before the COVID, I was doing quite a bit of macro photography and quite enjoying macro photography. Again, late to the game with macro photography, but I hope to be reporting back on that soon. So those are my updates. They're not very exciting. The wonderful Jubilee celebrations in the UK, completely missed. Not even got to watch it on TV. I've had COVID. It's been okay, but it's as expected. And I've spent the time updating my YouTube videos, and there's something I want to do when I'm better. That's me. So you've probably been thrilled with this update and want to know more about me going back to normal episodes when I'm actually out and doing something. And those will be coming up in the future. Thank you. Goodbye.